got to be careful.
I think the exotic nature of it, it came out of China, it came from left field. Nobody really understands exactly what it's all about yet. A coronavirus case is like an airplane crash. The flu is like a car wreck. We have a lot of car wrecks, people die in car wrecks, but it doesn't get much coverage. Every time somebody gets infected with a coronavirus, it's like an airplane crash. And that's just the way the media has treated this. They treat the coronavirus like a series of airplane crashes. And all I can say about the president, if you've got a better idea, come forward. And what I hope he will do is not sign off on some Democratic package coming out of the House tomorrow that's not going to grow the economy, but will grow the size of the government. We don't need economic stimulus for the federal government. We need economic stimulus for the for the American people, and they're going to want to grow government. And what the president wants to do is help the economy.
Well, and I think this is an important thing. Now, the president's right. I mean, bringing all these bankers in, Wall Street guys in, I think is important.
Private sector people.
Listen, we've had the greatest economic growth we've had. We see the jittery markets reacting day by day to what is going on here. There's the added factor of a oil battle, if you will, between Russia and the Saudis and OPEC. That does not help things. But at the end of the day, we've had unprecedented economic growth. Now the question is, if we can keep these numbers low, local cities, local states, municipalities doing their thing, schools closing as they deem necessary, people taking the precautions they can take. At the end of the day, what we have is a virus that's very scary like every other virus, but it is unlike H1N1, that impacted younger people. This seems to really be impacting or putting at real risk only the elderly with underlying health issues and some type of immune disorders. How do you interpret that data?
Well, what I understand is that this is targeted to the people who suffer the most are older people, people with pre-existing conditions. Well, I don't think we've had anybody in the world die under 30. Let's take it serious, but the president is meeting with the private sector. He's asking banks to be involved. He wants to increase the
involved in many, many millions. If we taught to contain, we could flatten it. So there's no number answer to your question until we act upon it.
I'll give you a question. Nobody talks about, every night they play like, 8 to 10 NBA games, and nobody talks about shutting them down. Is the NBA underreacting?
We would recommend that there not be large crowds. If that means not having any people in the audience when the NBA plays, so be it. But as a public health official, anything that has large crowds is something that would give a risk to spread.
We would recommend that there not be large crowds. Anything that has large crowds is something that would give a risk to spread. Fauci says if that means not having any people in the audience when the NBA plays, so be it. We sort of knew we were heading here, but now there it is. Senior NIH official saying there shouldn't be large crowds in the United States anymore. We as a country should no longer have events with large crowds, including professional sporting events. I should tell you, just as we got on the air tonight, the Oklahoma Thunder was due to be hosting the Utah Jazz. They had issued a 30-minute delay for the start of that game, and then ultimately they postponed that game tonight. So that NBA game is off. That's just happening moments ago. Soon after Dr. Fauci's comments today about basketball and large crowds in Congress, the NCAA announced that this year's March Madness NCAA basketball tournaments, both the men's games and the women's games, will be played without audiences there to watch those games. And it's not just this Oklahoma Thunder Utah Jazz game getting postponed tonight. It looks like other NBA franchises are now tipping over into caution on these matters. Today, the mayor of San Francisco instituted a ban on gatherings of more than 1,000 people, making clear that that explicitly includes Golden State Warriors games. Golden State Warriors will tomorrow play against the Brooklyn Nets, and that game is scheduled to go on, but there will be nobody in the audience. Just south of San Francisco, Santa Clara County, they're banning all gatherings of 1,000 people as of midnight last night. That will include San Jose Sharks hockey games, among many other things. Governor of Washington State today, Jay Inslee, announcing that in 3 hard-hit counties of his state, King County, Snohomish County, and Pierce County, from here on out, they will ban, the government will ban gatherings of more than 250 people. All Seattle schools are also being shut down for 2 weeks. New York today, the governor announced that City University of New York, CUNY, and State University of New York campuses, SUNY campuses, will all be shut down. And whether or not these types of actions by state and local officials feel draconian to you, American officials are still playing at the very low end of the kinds of interventions in daily life that may be tried at some point, that may be necessary to try to steer this pandemic away from its worst case trajectories. In recent days, we have seen Italy, for example, go from trying to quarantine the whole northern part of the country to ordering a nationwide quarantine of everyone in the country. Tens of millions of people ordered by their government, all Italian citizens ordered by their government to stay inside and avoid gatherings of any kind. Weddings and funerals banned. Well, as of today, the Italian government has gone a step further, ordering the closure of all stores of every kind other than pharmacies and food stores. Think about what the Italian economy is going to look like within days. The upward curve of the outbreak in Italy, just looking at the raw numbers there, shows you why the government there is taking these severely draconian measures, right? But the upward curve of the epidemic in Italy is also a cautionary tale, particularly for us, about what exponential growth really looks like in an epidemic where the virus is such that every infected person, on average, is infecting 2 to 3 others. The math with an epidemic like that is terrible. It's devastating. I mean, look at Italy. January 31st, Italy had 2 people known to be infected. Within a week, February 6th, that had risen to 3 people. 2 weeks after that, they were up to 17 people. 3 days later, by February 24th, 219 people. 4 days later, February 28th, 821 cases. Just over a week later, March 6th, 3,916 cases. 4 days later, as of yesterday, it's 10,149 cases. That's yesterday. Today, it's up 12,462 cases. I mean, that's the epidemiological mushroom cloud exploding in Italy. And you know, it's not like Italy has had its head buried in the sand. Italy closed schools. Italy canceled large gatherings. We saw those dramatic pictures of Italy playing sports matches in empty stadiums. They did it. They did tinker around the edges with all of these here and there interventions as they saw their numbers starting to rise. Well, now Italy is in a nationwide border-to-border lockdown as they try desperately to at least slow the spread. Imagine an order in this country to close every retail establishment in the country that was not a pharmacy or a food store. That's the order from the Italian government tonight in a nation of 60 million people. And
yes, there is regular consideration of that.
Okay. Stop the partisanship and unify together as one nation.
That is going to be jarring to the American people. We do have a problem with testing, and people are getting more nervous, and they're going to see the numbers go up, and they can't get a test. And that's an issue that we have to talk to. You're going to see major disruptions. Social distancing. What does that mean? It means we're going to have to start to close schools. We're going to be closing venues. Let the American people know that that's coming. Reducing density. What does that mean? There are going to be major governmental actions that have to be taking place. The American people have to be ready for it. They have to understand that the government is in charge, the government is mobilized, the government is competent, it's capable. And when you see these big changes coming, don't be nervous because it's part of a plan. And that's what I would have liked to hear from the president tonight. Here's what your government is going to do at this time of crisis. Yes, it's going to be a disruption. Yes, you will feel anxious, but it's going to be okay at the end of the day.
So 2 things for you. One, how true is it what he said about the rapidly ramping up of testing and that it's getting out there and just about anybody who wants one can get one? And second, you did something that was a surprise move for people in New York. It turns out like the big bucket of cases that you're dealing with right now, I think it's 121 of them, is in Westchester, which is not a place where people expected them. So you created this containment thing. And that came as a surprise to people. And how did that play, that move, in terms of this is what we have to do and in this random place where people wouldn't have expected it? And are you getting more testing and more stuff from the Fed? Are you catching up?
Well, you're right. First of all, it was shocking to people. And that is my point. This is not about a foreign virus, whatever that means. It's here. It's community spread. It's much more prevalent than we know. The testing does not reflect what it is. These are not random sample tests. It's because we have no testing capacity. That's why the numbers are low. If you actually had testing capacity, you would see how high the numbers are already. And as we do ramp up testing, you're going to see those numbers go sky high. And if you don't have the American people ready for it, it's going to be a problem. We are way behind on testing. And if you look at the other countries, you look at China, you look at South Korea, you see how they turned that curve. It was with very aggressive testing where they got ahead of it. You had maybe 200,000 tests per day in China, 15,000 tests per day in South Korea. We haven't done 10,000 tests since they've started testing. We just went through a situation with the federal government where I said, look, we're going to start contracting with private labs in New York State because we can't wait for this federal bottleneck. As soon as those private labs go out and start to test, Chris, the numbers are going to be shocking to people.
But at least people will understand the scale.
Going,
and you'll start to see good outcomes also, right? That 80% number that Tony Fauci and you talk about, which is 80% are asymptomatic or they get it and they get better. Now, Italy is looming large as a model of what not to do. But now they're on lockdown. Do you foresee quarantines like that, societal temporary shutdown like that here as unavoidable?
Well, look, there's only two ways that countries have reduced the numbers: massive quarantine or massive testing. We are not doing the level of testing we need to do, so you're not identifying the positives, so you're not stopping the communication. Quarantine, I don't even think you would get away with in this country what some of these other countries have done. You will see shutdowns, and I think that's one of the things that the president should have talked about tonight. You're going to see closing down of venues, schools, large gatherings, because you don't have an option. You're never going to bring the testing up to capacity in time. We're going to try, we're going to scramble, but it's not going to happen.
Andrew, here's what I'm hearing right now, just so you know. To your own point, you're making a point that is actually playing out in real time. The NBA just announced it's going to suspend the season following tonight's games. Now, that is going to be a life-changing situation for people on an entertainment level, I know. But they're not ready for this. NCAA games having no audience, that was enough. How should they understand a move like this? What does this mean about where they're going? And now, look, not to add on the pile of problems, but you have a huge holiday coming up in New York, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's great for enthusiasm and emotion and community. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, well, for example, you're right. Now, I have the issue of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, right? And I recommended to the organizers that we have to postpone it. It's 2 million spectators, 150,000 marchers. You can't do that in this environment. But that's going to play out, not well, I can tell you that much. But, you know, that's why I get paid the big bucks, right? Well, let's not go near big bucks. But anyway, that situation is going to play out 100 times, Chris. I did the New Rochelle containment area. Nobody was ready for it. Closing down schools. We thought this was only 10, 15 people. This is all an overreaction. No, the numbers go sky high. There will be disruption. The density has to come down. We have to scramble now to make sure we don't have a health care crisis where we don't have hospitals to handle the capacity. We have no surge hospital capacity here. we may very well, we're looking in New York at secondary structures that we can start to prepare for temporary hospital situations. I mean, this is a massive governmental mobilization that you need a real government to handle. You know, this is not political. You're not going to do this on Twitter. This is government, baby. This is what it's about. This is the mobilization, the skill, the expertise to manage a government. And then you need the people of this country ready to accept it without getting overly anxious and be part of it. It's not just wash your hands. We're beyond wash your hands, my brother. There's going to have to be major shifts in society short term. Long term will be okay. But short term, there's going to be major shifts that government is going to have to enact. We all want to be part of it.
Well, Governor Andrew Cuomo and everybody else, my big brother, I'm proud of you. I love you. Thank you for explaining the hard parts and what's going to have to happen so that we can get to a better place in the future. God bless. I'll talk to you in a second.
Proud of you.
All right. We're just getting details on this huge breaking news from the sports world. The NBA is going to suspend all games until further notice. Now, look, I know the scariest part of that, or is the most confusing, the most frustrating, is until further notice. What does that mean? We don't know. So we're going to be back with that and what we know next.